Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. When it comes to EVE news, we haven't really gotten any updates to the game itself. Well, some small patches have happened and I think that they added a special asteroid belt in Nullsec in order to fix a spawn problem for some NPCs that would like come on the gate or something like that. Not exactly sure what it's all about, but I think it's another good change. One thing that I did notice over the last week is that some of the players have been experimenting with like artificial intelligence, creating art through some sort of keywords. Very cool. I think I know where this was inspired from though. So that a couple of weeks ago, the same thing happened on the Path of Exile subreddit for the Lake of Calandra leak that's coming later next week. I think that inspired some people to take a look at EVE Online, because what other game does have absolutely amazing art? It is EVE, and some of the results are really amazing. With, I think a lot of players mentioned that right away as well, or a lot of commenters, a lot of Warhammer 40k vibes in there as well. But it's really cool to see how far that kind of tech is going as well. Yeah, if you're like an artist, especially a concept artist, I'd get more and more worried about my job. But EVE is definitely another one of those places that is gonna potentially be really rich for all of those AI creations. Don't really think I have a lot else to talk about, except that I'm really still looking forward to more information, concrete information on the faction warfare changes, and that I've now I've disposed my PI. It's gone now from Amar space, and I'm still moving that out into Galente space. Still basically have to decide on what system to choose. Might be Yona itself, where I have my base of operations, but might also hunt for some lower taxes. We'll see what I decide to do, and then I'm basically ready with my move. I've actually started playing a little bit more around in Galente space, and taking some trips to Jeddah as my main trade hub of the moment. But things are still going well, still in a pretty quiet phase though. But yeah, let's see what CCP comes out with when it comes to those faction warfare changes. So as always, we'll take a quick look at the New Eden store as well, see what's happening over here. Oh, is that a sale on 12 months? I mean, I think that's a package deal though. So let's see on the services front right here. I'm gonna assume that these are just package deals, that these are actually not a special sale. It would have the sale tag otherwise, yeah, I thought perhaps we would see something happen with the daily alpha injectors or plex themselves, as that has started to happen. Some posts on the subreddit as well about the very high plex prices, which from a psychological standpoint might just be also a little bit of panic starting to set in. How much more can the market take? In my experience, the market can always surprise people, so it will always like do another rush up when players are viewing these as very high prices, but there is of course a limit as well to how high prices can be. So let's dive in, let's take a look, and let's start with those pilot services coming in at 335. Like that, and let's go straight to that plex chart. Then here it is, continuing relentlessly to go up. One thing to note though, that you can see that 5-day moving average starting to slow down a little bit, although today's averages are already higher than they have been for the entire year. We're basically still well away between the 5-day and the 20-day moving average, so we've got upwards momentum as volumes go lower and lower, which is not good for the velocity of ISK, of course. Less trade actually happening with these higher prices, but I think at this point we all know the main reason behind this. It is the increased cost in real life for plex, for a subscription, for anything related to pilot services, and the delayed response, you could say, is kind of normal as well, as just before all of that happened, I think it was here in May, CCP also gave everyone the chance to get like 3 months, 6 months, etc. going at a really good price, and you can see about 3 months later we are now starting to see those really high plex prices come in, because this has to be new supply, players buying from the current prices, and that's a much different proposition from just 6 months ago. The multiple pilot train certificate is actually showing a little bit of stalling over the last week or so. It is above 1.75 billion on the chart. You can see the gap close between the 5-day and the 20-day moving average, showing that here the market wants a little bit of a plateau. That is also as volumes are cratering to nothing. So in the last week we have a day apparently that's going to be a 1, no, that's 3 multiple pilot train certificates that have been sold over the entire day. That is definitely not a lot. 1.8 billion for the sellers and 1.6 billion almost for the buyers here. Should probably take a look including outside of JITA, although I don't think it'll have that much of an impact. And then for Plex, no, so the lowest price is still in JITA itself, and a couple buyers a little bit more aggressive, going well above 4.1 million at this point. Pretty narrow margin here still between sellers and buyers, and you can see the minimum prices are mostly followed, and then there's upwards pressure on those sell prices that are keep pushing higher and higher. Alright, then we get these skill extractors. I think we'll see a similar trend, except that we don't have that upwards push that much or that visible on the skill extractor max prices. So we should have a much small, an even more narrow margin actually. We're seeing 492 million for the sellers and 484 million for the buyers. That is indeed a very, very narrow margin for sellers and buyers. But as volumes also take a really big dive over the last month or so, prices have gone to yet another 1-year high point. And on the chart you can see 500 million might just come into play, which is extremely expensive, of course. The impact on the injectors here are the large scale injectors that are finally responding. I've actually been waiting for that for a couple of weeks now at least, but eventually, of course, the fact that plex and those extractors are a big part of what makes a large scale injector, you should see a price response here. And so we shoot straight through the 800 million mark and we settle at 847 million for the seller, so almost 850, and buyers, they had to give up, having to go above 800 as well at 808 for these buyers for the large scale injectors. I don't think small scale injectors can buck that trend. No, there it is, as we've actually gotten used to, even more violent on the chart, faster increase in price in just a couple of days. We shoot from that high point, but you know, definitely still in range for the last month or so at 1.6, and then there we go, we shoot 1.7, and then we go above 1.8. So that's definitely a very sharp response for those small scale injectors. In just a couple of days we're at 176 million for the sellers and 161 for the buyers. Yeah, buyers forced up as well above a 160, which before I think that they could still hope to grab some of these small scale injectors just below that price point, like days right here. You can see that we were still just below the 160, but the pressure mounted, and then eventually yeah, basically the price blew up, I think, as plex just inexorably continues to go up and up. Next, we've got the daily alpha injectors, also reeling from everything else as well, so unable to buck the trend here. Upwards price revision, massive one. I think again 3-month anniversary is playing a pretty big role here for the higher prices, and so we are now shooting up to 54 million for the sellers, 47 million for the buyers. So at this point, this is the new average price for daily alpha injectors. Same question as what we quite often ask ourselves: is CCP happy with this? Do they expect alpha players to also pay the inflation tax in game, you could say, and thus rather than make 40 to 45 million for their daily alpha injectors, they now have to go ahead and make 50 to 55 million for those daily alpha injectors. At the moment, they can still maybe get away with a 50 million, but you know, if you want to buy it straight from the market, we're already at 54. Or will CCP intervene here? Will we see a sale for daily alpha injectors to bring the price back down to that average, which we've seen has been maintained at least twice here over the last year? The real question is, of course, is this part of the policy, or are they willing to let this price go as part of a full, you know, market absorption of the higher prices for services in EVE Online? And then finally, we still have the hypercores that are following suit. So this shows that in general here, something happened. And I do think that it's the 3 months since the, or just before the price change, as 3 month subs start to run out, players have to make a decision here. And then you might just, still buy your sub, but not buy extra plex, not buy extra hypercores, not buy extra daily alpha injectors. A lot of that might just be on the chopping block for those higher prices, and as a result we are here at 450,000 for the sellers, 417,000 for the buyers. Also a 1 year high point yet again for all of these. But as I've said, in the plex market we're also starting to see that this is having a little bit of an effect on those that are looking to actually still buy and use plex, as they are seeing these high prices as a very bad thing. And the question is, how much higher can it go before that really has an impact on players as well. We'll see, of course, how all of this evolves, but right now I would say we're feeling basically the full brunt of the real life price changes, together of course as well with the summertime slump that's in all likeliness extreme this year, just because of the first summer in a couple of years without restrictions for a lot of people. That's going to play a part as well, and as a result we're basically in this perfect storm where we are seeing these 1 year high prices here, plex, extractors, skill injectors, basically across the board. Yeah, it's everywhere for these pilot services this week. Next up, let's take a look at the minerals at 11:30. 11:30, there we go. Let's go. I might speed things up a little bit for this one, because here in Belgium we're in the middle of a heat wave. Not an extreme one, but yeah, 33 degrees Celsius today. I'm already starting to feel the heat build up for myself here in this room. And yeah, it's not an extreme temperature, but as probably you guys know, here in Belgium we're not used to that. All our houses are built for keeping warmth into the houses, and most of us, myself included, don't have air conditioning. But let's get started. Here is the titanium chart. Still a little bit of pressure here, but I think for the week, you may have seen that on the ticker as well, we're basically stalling on all movements. At least that's my expectation. We see it in titanium and in megasite on the weekly change. So we are talking for the GETA prices. 371 was 369 when I was making the ticker. So this is basically flat for the week. 355 for the buyer, still a very narrow margin. 50, 100 million coming in quite regularly, 50 and a couple of billion here, keeping prices in check. We should, in my opinion, be able to keep titanium prices decently stable. Any drop in price is going to incentivize players that still are producing capital ships in nullsec to snag up those cheaper pyrite titanium prices. Pyrite actually losing a little bit of ground over the last week or so, but already stabilizing at the tail end. 875, excuse me, for the sellers and 829 for the buyers. Yeah, margin wise not that good. Couple of sellers coming in here with that's probably one seller with like over a billion units, close to it, and this is another 500 million units coming in here. That is putting some pressure on the price. Maybe someone liquidating, maybe something like that is happening here, but it's obviously that's having the impact here on pyrite prices. And then we've got Mexalon for HiSec. That is quite often giving us a difficult to reach chart. Actually on the upside here, slightly up for the week, well above 60, 64.25 for the sellers and above 60 for the buyers as well. So the story, it's been the same for a couple of months at this point. I think I feel like it's okay to sell your titanium and your Mexalon as well. For pyrite, yeah, for this week, maybe try to hold off until that 1.5 billion units has been absorbed by the market. But in general, hoarding a little bit, right, putting a little bit aside might be a good plan, but it's probably a decent time to sell. I'm actually going to drink. You may have heard that my voice is croaking here. And there we go. As we move to my favorite mineral for the last couple of years, here is the Isogen chart, trying to make its way back above 400 ISK. My favorite because it did exactly what I expected it would do. This entire increase price here was basically predicted during EVE talk because it was old reserves that were finally starting to be depleted. We were getting closer and closer to an active supply demand. Now, there are still players out there holding decent chunks of Isogen, but they're way more careful than dumping them massively, like 2 billion units at a time here, and as a result we are getting these higher prices. Isogen selling for, well, 400 ISK for most sellers again, and 374 for the buyers. Volume wise, you can see that has gone down 10 million, 13 million, another one for 20, but that is it. You got to go up to like a 425 to find 75 million units, 462 for another 90 million units. I think we're still going to bounce into that from time to time, but especially if nullsec, which does seem to have a little bit of action happening out there as well, becomes in need of maybe building some extra large ships, maybe replacing a Nix, stuff like that. Then we will potentially see that pressure build again and find a higher consensus price, in my opinion, than 400 ISK for Isogen, if those, without those old reserves that are still keeping things basically pinned down a little bit. Then we've got Noxium that was really reversing the trend, going down in price substantially. You can see that has stalled as well. Now we're basically flat over the last week, 5-day, 20-day, starting to come together as well. So I think there's market consensus that 830 for the sellers and 803, so just above 800 ISK, is low enough for Noxium. Still have like 12 million units coming in here. That's probably going to keep things in check for a while longer. But once we're through this, again, you're at like a million, 2 million, less than a million on most sell orders. I think that's going to start to put a little bit of upwards pressure on the price of Noxium as well. When Noxium was above 1250 and the most expensive Tech 1 mineral in the game, there was a lot of incentive to go out there in low sec to maybe risk some extra supplies to set up some operations. It's the riskiest part of space in EVE Online, probably. Wormhole Space might be a contender as well. Yeah, I think Wormhole Space has some extra levers that defenders can pull. So as a result, we got those higher supplies as well, I think, and prices starting to come down as nullsec prices started to go up over the last couple of months. But now we're down to 800 ISK. Yeah, you might actually, if you're like someone that wants to risk a day trip or something like that, or a smaller scale operation, you're probably looking away from Noxium and back at some of those nullsec minerals at this point, as we have lost, well, probably 600 ISK on a 1400 basis since last winter. Then we've got those nullsec charts. Here is Zydrine, and yeah, when you are seeing Zydrine prices above 2000 ISK, that might incentivize you to try and hunt for that rather than for some Noxium. 2283 for the sellers, 2108 for the buyers. I think even historically these will be very high Zydrine prices, and I think it's now the most expensive Tech 1 mineral. Yeah, probably something that's pretty exclusive to nullsec, maybe in Potrin space and things like that, maybe in Wormhole space some limited resources as well. But if you're looking to basically increase the supply of this stuff, it's gonna be in all likeliness from nullsec, and I think that might start to switch, right? Noxium is starting to bottom out. I don't think the market can take that much more from Zydrine prices, and so we might see that trend start to reverse at this point. Megasite is definitely showing signs of a plateau as well, not really able to push above 1750. You can see that it was punished immediately with some volumes showing up here. So Megasite is currently going for 1670, something like that, and 1600 for the buyers, though buyers forced up in those nullsec minerals to meet the demand price of those sellers. But I think at this point both Megasite and Zydrine have basically regained the crown as the most expensive Tech 1 minerals, and so I think supplies are going to start to come online. We'll put a little bit of pressure on this one and might actually give both Noxium and Isogen a bit of breathing room to go back up. Then finally we've got Morphite tied to Tech 2, of course, seeing a little bit of pressure, which I would say as a good sign for the rest of the story, because this to me indicates that there's some more nullsec mining happening, and that might just lead to that extra Zydrine and Megasite as well. Below 40,000 for the sellers, haven't seen that in a while, and 38,000 for the buyers as well. So very mixed picture here in the minerals overall. Again, I think high sec, what you mine and selling it right now makes sense to me. I don't see the general landscape change that in such a way that hoarding makes any sense. Low sec ones, I would hold off on that, because I think with enough pressure as well from players not willing to sell at the current prices, that will be alright. And then of course nullsec is extremely expensive, with Morphite and Megasite showing first signs that maybe a little bit of plateau and extra supplies at these high prices are coming online. Next up, the PI market at 2020. There we go. Let's take a look at this and see if the trend has broken. So here is broadcast node still at around 1.5 million, just below that for the sellers, above 1.4 million for the buyers, showing that there is still pretty strong demand. I would say this is not a sign of a trend break. We're still doing quite all right, and yeah, kind of confirmed here by construction blocks that make their way back above 10,000 disc, almost 11,000 for the sellers. Not enough supply for the demand. Look at that, what a difference a year can make, even half a year can make. We are lacking in supplies of construction blocks. Demand is higher than supply, which is leading to 1 year high prices well above 10,000 disc. Amazing to see this happen in summertime. I personally do feel like this shows that CCP has done really well with the Siege Green update. They have managed to make it more attractive and more possible for nullsec to produce larger ships, probably lots of dreadnoughts being built at the moment, and that is having its impact on the PI market in a positive way for prices, making things more valuable as well. So I do think that, you know, that long-term thinking, it's still difficult to say exactly where we will land, but I do feel like CCP has given themselves quite a few levers in the industry economy through all of the patches of the last couple of years, so that they can pinpoint certain problems and try to fix them with updates. And as a result, I think PI turns out to be the surprise winner of all of that. Well, I kind of said that this is what could happen, right? At first PI was also depressed because no one was building capital and super capital ships. It just made no economic sense. And so demand was cratering as well, even further cratering of PI demand. And then CCP actually nerfed the amounts needed for PI. But I mentioned that if there's enough extra production that would happen, we could see more demand and thus higher prices, despite the nerf to the needs of these PI materials. And I think that's sort of what's happening here. Construction blocks doing really well. Then we've got another thing that may be part of it. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong on that, you can only produce PI on an Omega account though, and that may be part of the equation as well. But yeah, here coolants to me still confirming. Look at those max prices starting to touch 10k as well. 9,200 for one seller, 9,600 for the next, and then 10,000 disc starting to come into view on the front page. Buyers at 9,200 as well. Enriched uranium flat below 10k, so this is still really nice. 10,250 for the sellers, almost 10,000 disc for the buyers. Integrity response drones able to easily maintain those gains from that Siege Green update, still well above 2.5 million, 2.8 for the sellers, 2.6 for the buyers. Mechanical parts starting to show a little bit of a spread here in the last couple of days, but in general the average price is still just below 10k. We're talking 10,000 for the sellers and 9,000 for the buyers. Normal spread, normal. A little bit, I think, of normalization here. So supply demand probably in a good match right now. So this could be the first sign that maybe some more supply is coming online and will start to have an impact on the prices. But in general, this week as well, still a very strong summer for PI. Miniature electronics working on another 1 year high point. 13,600 for the sellers, 12,240 for a refined PI material. Very expensive, very very nice. Nano Factories did a little bit of a bump here. That managed to get back above 1 million. We're back just above 900,000 for the sellers, just below 900,000 for the buyers, showing that the demand is there. Maybe a little bit of extra supply here when prices, a little bit, actually a lot of extra supply here when prices went above 1 million, did a little bit of a bad number on those prices. But look at those 20-day moving average, they're really touching that million. So if this dries up, I think the uptrend could be back. Organic mortar applicators above 700,000, not exactly a big winner, but buyers above 700k as well, showing that the demand is there. Recursive computing modules, that one's not doing that well, but yeah, buyers above 800k as well. So if we can get that one, 880 is that, there we go. Buyers are above 800,000. At least it's not as bad as last month. So for the summer evolution here, despite the fact that it's one of the worst advanced PI materials in the bunch, we're still seeing a pretty strong summer. Robotics still above 75k, 77 for the sellers, 73 for the buyers, so very high price here as well. Rocket fuel, look at that, above 11k, almost 12,000 for the sellers, 11,250 for the buyers as well, so less than 1,000 on this margin as well, showing strong demand. Self-harmonizing power cores, able to stay above 2 million, yeah, comfortably. Even the buyers are still above 2 million. Smart fab units, here the volumes are that bad that you do get those dips. In general, are we back above 60? 63,000 almost for the sellers, still 50,000 for the buyers here. There's clearly a lack of interest in the market, but the general trend again here, sterile conduits back on the average for the summer, above 800,000 disks. Supercomputers, see what's happening here, 83,000 now for the sellers, 65 for the buyers. Another one where the volumes are actually not high enough to really make a lot happen, I think, but still, look at that summer trend last couple of months, slowly up, and then here a small peak happening right now. Synthetic oil above 8,000, 83 to 83. Not great, but I'd say overall still not that bad. Synapses starting to feel a bit of pressure here. 91,000 for the sellers, 77,000 for the buyers. Very interesting. You can see a completely different chart from everything else with 3 spikes. Main reason for this is that this PI material is needed in implant production. So on the one hand, with 76,000 for the buyers, you can see that minimum price starting to take a big dive. You could look into investing a bit in synthetic synapses and being ready for a CCP announcement around implants, maybe another implant BPC drop as part of a reward structure. Something like that can happen and can be very lucrative, as you can see on these spikes right here. But with one warning, of course, CCP did mention during FanFest that they're looking at attributes, and the most likely impact or the most likely change that they'll do is just to gut them right out of the game, to pull them out, no more attributes, which would mean a lot of implants being completely gone or useless as well, and that could have a big impact on the entire industry change for implants. Transcranial microcontrollers, not as pronounced in the spikes, but it's basically also tied to implant production, and you can see a similar drop in demand at the tail end here. 83k now to 63, a little bit higher than that, almost 64,000 for the buyers, but that means that those buyers have dropped off to the price of those lower ranges already as well. Water-cooled CPU, really overproduced at 4.4 and 4.2 for the buyers, really narrow margin, but yeah, it's basically half the price of most other refined PI materials. And then we get wetware mainframes that just had a little bit of a spike, did recover from that, but we're talking 1.6 million to 1.4 million. So not bad, another really strong week for PI, and really nice for people that are still producing. I stopped last week as I am moving my PI production into Galinte space, but yeah, I was making coolants and I was making mechanical parts and selling them at really good prices, especially compared to the last couple of years. That leads us to advanced wound mats at 29 minutes. And there we go, and that's gonna be a bit of a different story in all likeliness. Let's dive right in with the Crystalline carbonate for Galente production still below 100 disc. Well, no, today's daily average touching 100, so sellers are at 103, 104 actually, and then buyers are still at 92, so we're still hovering to just above 100 disc or below 100 disc, which is of course a terrible price on this 1 year chart. We're still massively oversupplied, and honestly we're basically looking for the bottom to also look for a bottom in Take 2. Next we've got Caldari, which is titanium carbide, that's able to stay above 125. A little bit of pressure in the last couple of days there, but then all of a sudden supplies have dropped 159 to 135. So here you could say maybe a bottom has been formed, but if we look at everything else, like Fernite carbide as well, that's back below under disc at 99.99 for the first seller with 6 million units, and then 95 for the buyers. That still feels like it's really cheap, and it could go lower yet again as well. And then we've got tungsten carbide that's made its way back to 125, so maybe here May to July could have become the bottom, but maybe a little bit too early to tell as well. 133 to 122. The good news is that we are starting to see a little bit more action in Nulsig as well, with some fights happening here and there. That could be positive for the price. That could sort of confirm that a bottom might be in. And I'll be honest as well, in the last week I basically started to gamble on that, not in Advanced Moon Materials but in Take 2 ships. I have bought half a dozen or so Take 2 ships. I'm not exactly sure which ones they are on my main, but part of them including as some medium-term investments, hoping that a turnaround is indeed in the works. Let's see what's happening with the metamaterials, which we start with Galente. Is the photonic metamaterials still showing signs of pressure here, going towards 7,000 disc on average, 7.3 to 7.1 for the buyers. Then Caldari is non-linear metamaterials. There's another dip, so showing that the bottom may not be in. I may yet again be early, but we are starting to see investors being interested as we went close to 10,000 disc on the chart. We're back at 12,430 for the sellers, 11,400 for the buyers. For Minmatar, it's plasmonic metamaterials that's taking a dive right now. Let's see if it breaks 10k. We're definitely getting decently close to that. 11,000 to just above 10,000 for the buyers. Again, investors are probably ready with this as well, but I personally am still a little bit afraid of catching a falling knife. I think in Take 2 ships you get a little bit of that extra chance that maybe a big fleet blows up or something like that, and you get an extra spike, which I don't expect to happen in these Advanced Moon Materials. That's going to be more of a trend thing where, well, Nulsig isn't able to mine as much, supplies start to come down, activity picks up after the summer, and thus prices start to go up as even more people want their Take 2 ships. That's sort of the gamble that I'm starting to take, but I'm still curious. I mean, it's the 13th of August. We still have at least a couple of weeks before things can turn around. I wouldn't be surprised if a last desperate dump happens as well. So I'm a little bit wary to start to invest in Advanced Moon Mats just yet. Alright, so plasmonic for Minmatar, and then terahertz for a Mars, still below 10,000 disc as well. 9.9 for the sellers. That's starting to dry up though, and then we've got 9.4 for the buyers as well. So it's interesting. I would say still be very careful, but yeah, honestly, now that I think about it, it's just 2 more weeks in August. If that theory holds up, that yeah, we will actually see, you know, with the Nulsig action, with CCP's announcements, we could still see a drop due to PoE in all honesty, because I am personally also going to play the league, so at least a couple more weeks there. The bottom may not be in just yet, but summer might be ending, and then who knows if things will start to pick up there. That's basically a gamble that you could start to take if that's also your thinking, starting to buy especially some of those 1 year low Advanced Moon Mats, like here terahertz metamaterials below 10k, does start to make sense. As always, be careful, don't put all your eggs in that single basket. I would say don't spook the market too much with the volumes either, and then you'll be fine. But it starts to make sense to me at this point to look into some Advanced Moon Mats investments. Then we get the others. Here is fermionic condensates, 1 year low point right now at 38,000 and 36,000 for the buyers. Then we've got our ferrogel, starts to pull up a little bit from 20k, still not by much, 22 to 21. Here are our fullerites. You can see that the bottom went close to 400 disc 1, 2, 3 times since May. Currently we're at 523 and 469, so an in-between spot. But look at that 20-day moving average. Pressure will probably already build. You could, yeah, again, you could start to look at maybe some further buy opportunities here and there. Hypersynaptic fibers, buyers above 5k, but still again really low, very low range. Nanotransistors went below 2.5, back above 2.5 for the sellers, 2,400 for the buyers. Another one that you could probably take a look at. Phenolic composites, right, did that bump, hopeful bump up to 1250. We're back below 1,000 disc for phenolic composites. Sellers below 990, buyers at 871. Then we get pressurized oxidizers, tried to go back above 10k and is losing ground on that, 94274. So here really big margin as well, and we're on the downside on the downside on the chart. I think it is right now possible to buy very close to that 7,500 disc, which is still a really good price on this full 1 year chart. Reinforced carbon fiber starting to show the first signs of not really being willing to go that much lower. 6.8 to 6.7 almost. Yeah, that's gap has closed. And then our ceramic fibers is also went above 300 disc, and then some sellers came out of the woodworks, 242 to 232. So in the last couple of weeks I've always looked at Take 2 ships, mostly for my at first mostly for ships that were really cheap and that I had plans for to use myself, like the EOS, couple of command ships, things like that. Last week I went into a little bit of a buying spree again. You know, 1 ship, 2 ships here and there, not like I'm buying hundreds of Take 2 ships or anything like that either, but I have made a couple of purchases that I'm basically not planning to fly. And then for this week, I'll be honest, I think I am going to start to look at advanced movements. These, if the theory holds up that the summer slump still has a big impact on all of this as well, then these are potentially your last 2 weeks to look for the bargains in advanced moon materials. So it's something to think about. It's definitely something, especially now that I'm flying in Galantis space and that JITA is just 8 or 9 jumps away, something that I will do as well over the next 2 weeks. And then let's see what happened in Take 2 ships here, and I'll try to remember some of those that I've bought coming in at 37.05. So for Take 2 we have the Basilisk first of all, that's now dropping to a 1 year low point, and I haven't bought one. I should have. A buy order last week would have triggered at this point, 115 to 94 million. Unfortunately, right, you can see we're starting to turn the corner on this, so it's gonna be harder and harder to grab a buy order here in the Basilisk market, but this is something that you could definitely still look into. Look at how low we are on the full 1 year chart, and then I can tell you that I did buy a Cerberus, and there's that timing wise. Why did I manage to buy a Cerberus? And I actually went pretty aggressive on my buy order on these ones because we're still seeing those daily averages on the left side of the full chart, and we're still going down on this one. So I may have been like a little bit early. I'm not exactly sure the price I bought at, but you can see we're at the 1 year low point, 129 to 121. I already have a couple of Cerberuses that are fit and that I fly from time to time, so I'm not planning to like use even more of them, but to me this chart made sense to jump in and buy a Cerberus, which I then successfully did. I think there's like 1 stealth bomber left on the buy orders that hasn't triggered. Next, the Curse. I also bought one of these as well. Same story, right? You could see that we were going to test that 1 year low point yet again. We're on the left side of the chart, so you had every chance to get the buy order to trigger. 116 to 110. Again, don't ask me the exact price at which I bought. I basically am very happy with those purchases and planning to look at like maybe winter or something like that. Hopefully a real turnaround, a strategic strategic turnaround in Take 2 to create a sell opportunity that would be across the board where I would sell all of them. But yeah, I bought an extra curse. Honestly, it's a nice recon ship. I might even use it as well. So it's not like that one is fully just a trade. I think I bought 2 of them actually. So one for potential use and one as an investment, but another like super close to a 1-year low point, 115 to 110. The chart just looked too good for me and I made a move on that. Next one, I bought that as well. The Damnation was still flat on the 250. We could see that those minimum prices were still below 250. That's again where I bought out as well. We're up to 280 for the sellers, 255 for the buyers. So I was probably just right as well on the timing. You're gonna be a little bit late. It's still cheap on the full 1-year chart, but I bought that one as well. Then we've got the Deacon that's flat, and you can also see those minimum prices starting to edge back up here, 16.5 to 14.8. I haven't bought that. I bought an Eagle. All right, again, timing wise, probably a little bit of luck because I probably bought it down here. Same story, right? I could see the chart. We were still going down, so the chance for a trigger on a buy order was pretty high. Actually, a little bit surprised that I grabbed this one, but I managed to do it. 165 to 132 at the moment, so that potentially, you know, you could say I could already take a little bit of profit. Again, I'm looking at the longer term here, and I will be waiting for like a general trend in Take 2 before I sell, and I'll probably try to sell everything. But the Eagle is also one that was basically, I don't plan to fly the Eagle, but I know that it's a doctrine in nullsec. As a result, to me, it made a lot of sense to try and grab one. Then here is the EOS, still on a 1-year low point. I bought one too early, so I have mine ready on this. 234 now to 215. I think I bought it at like around 250, which on a 1-year chart is still great, which looking back was a little bit early. So for those that are looking to invest, yeah, maybe the EOS at the moment could be something to look into. I mean, it is a super powerful battle cruiser platform. Ares, I think I bought one of these as well, or 2 of these, 35 million to 26 million. So you can again see, I think, why we were very low already, and we were starting to get a little bit of a downtrend on this one. At the moment, we're basically at a 1-year low point. It's an interdictor. In big fights, you'll lose some interdictors. To me, that makes a lot of sense as well. Flycatcher is bottoming out right now. 45 to 38.4. Again, unfortunately, for those that basically want to jump in now as well, I think last week was the right timing. If I look at this as well again, you can see last couple of days we're back on the upswing, and that does mean that the chance that a buy order below 40 million is going to trigger is going to be a lot lower than last week, and a lot of these Caldari ships are starting to show signs of that, although the Cerberus is actually still going down. And then we get the Guardian. I've got an old Guardian that I'm still holding, so yeah, who knows. 123 to 110, super low as well, and still basically hovering at that low point. I think if you haven't bought one by now, you could definitely still do it. Heretic, not at the 1-year low point, losing a little bit of ground as we went back to 40 million. We're at 37 to 33. That's not something to jump into. Hound is back up to 20 million. Almost for the sellers, 16 million for the buyers. So I really liked the stealth bombers because in my opinion you could buy a couple more of these. They have decent volumes and they have the volatility as well, with enough buying power from time to time as fleet need to be replaced. But yeah, on this one, honestly, I'd love to buy below 15 million. That would be my go-to. Ikitursa is continuing to go down, definitely for those with really big wallets, but 480 to 445 million, and we are on the downside. In all likeliness, you can buy an Ikitursa below 450 million. If you are looking at this as the summer slump and then a 630 as a normal price, might be interesting. Then I actually did this as well, bought an extra Ishtar as we are continuing to slowly go down even lower, 121 now to 112. I personally think that here it's not going to be like this forever either, because compare an Ishtar to like the tactical destroyers and you've got such a great price proposition that to me this feels like at some point CCP is also going to intervene. Next we've got the Kirin. Ooh, that starts to look interesting for right now. 15 million to 10 million, so you're buying just above 10 million. That's really below the entire chart. That's pretty low, definitely something to look into as well. Next we've got the Manticore, back up a little bit for the week, currently going for 18.5 to 16 million. 16 is probably still okay if you absolutely want to buy. You're still buying pretty low, but again, we're on the wrong side of the chart here in order to have those buy orders really trigger. Then we've got the Nemesis that's going back, seeing some signs of pressure here yet again. Definitely want to buy below 13 million. We're buying below 13 million. So if you're looking for that investment, this actually looks like an okay place as well. Nighthawk is slowly going down from 300 million. I'd need to see even more of a pullback before I jump here. Oneros, did I buy an Oneros? I think I bought an Oneros as well as the chart went. Yeah, definitely. Actually, yeah, as we were all of a sudden logistics cruiser. I mean, that's actually a pretty damn good platform. Now going for 95 million for the sellers, 88 million for the buyers. And I know the volumes are bad. I've said that a lot of times, but this to me, right, 1 year low point below 100 million for a logistics cruiser, again, felt like something that I shouldn't pass up on as I was buying anyways. And then I went for the Purifier as well. So about a week ago, I think I still bought. Yeah, I bought below 15 million, but one of the sell orders or one of the volumes is still stuck and won't trigger. So I bought like just in time or just too late on this one as well. We're back up to 16.5 and then 14.3. So we're still pretty low on the buyers, but it's that same story again that I keep telling you guys. As we go back up on the chart, these buy orders are very difficult to trigger. What's still happening is someone comes in at maybe like a 14.9, maybe if they're lucky at a 14.5, but so one of these is still mine, probably this one at the 13.5 then with the one quantity remaining. So it gives you a little bit of an idea where I managed to jump in, which was on this downside right there. Then we've got the Rook, not at a 1 year low point. That's not where I'd want to buy that close to 100 million. Saber is starting to go back up a little bit as well, back above 40 million, which if then, where is my Aries? Which I bought well below 40 million. That to me again shows that I think I made the right choice there. So we were at Saber. Next we've got the Scalpel. Surprise jump right here, back up to 20 million ISK. So a bit of a surprise, but you're selling at 20, still buying at 13. So that's the danger of the Scalpel. The volumes are really bad, but this does also, speak to my theory that if you were still really looking at trading intake 2 over the summer, it was going to be the small ships that could move in price quite sharply very quickly. And so here you could have easily bought close to 10 million in the last couple of weeks, and now you're selling close to 20 million. I never made that gamble because of the terrible volumes, but it was definitely a possibility. Then we get a Scimitar back below 130, 121 to 115. Sleipnir, I looked at it, but I decided nope, not gonna do that. 259 to 242. Vagabond still very low as well, not much to say. And then the Zarmast is back at the low end of the range as well at 450 to 422 million. But yeah, I mentioned from time to time I'm planning to buy one of those Take 2 ships, planning to buy one of those Take 2 ships. That was always in the vibe of, because I can see myself use them and fit them in the near future. But yeah, last week I pulled the trigger on. Now I'm also going to buy some ships as investments for the medium to longer term, probably looking at the winter for those sell opportunities. And then this week personally I am making that switch as well, that we're late summer, you still have potentially some opportunities in the next 2 weeks in advanced moon materials. So that is what I am personally looking into at the moment. Next up, the Tech 3 ships, 4820. And let's get started. Here are the destroyers. Confessor, so a destroyer, 50 million ISK for the Confessor, 53 to 47 million. We're still staying well above 50 million, which again double, 2 confessors for 1 Ishtar. To me, yeah, still feels like the Ishtar is really cheap. We are seeing a little bit of pressure on the prices, but still not enough to say that without CCP doing something, this is going to change, because this is in all likeliness still due to gas. We saw a bit of pressure in faction ship price as well, pirate faction ships especially, and so the gas situation is a little bit better, but problem from supply created by the players with the high prices taking advantage of that economic opportunity. But it still means that at the moment, in my opinion, both faction ships and these tactical destroyers are in a very bad spot, position, price quality, you could say, price power wise. The terrible volumes, I think, sort of confirm that as well. But again, CCP does then have the levers in hand to do something about that. So we will see, of course, what they decide to do, potentially after the summer as well, I think. Then we've got the Hecate staying still well above 50 million as well, 55 to 50 million. Next, we've got the Jackdaw. Again, a bit of pressure in the last couple of months is clearly visible, but we're still talking 53 million for a Jackdaw, 49 for the buyers, with slightly better supplies than a month ago or so. And then this Vapel is still not doing that well. Maybe something to gamble on if you really need to, right? 45 to 39.7 million. You're buying his Vapel for 40 million. But if my theory then is right and CCP is actually going to try and make Tech 2 a bit more expensive, or this stuff a little bit less expensive, I would not be the right move either. So for me at the moment, tactical destroyers are probably in a bad spot just because of the economic realities of their production cycles. And until it's CCP that does something about it, I don't think that's going to change. And I think that they're basically too expensive at the moment. And as a result, they're falling more and more out of favor. Then we've got our cruisers. Here is the Legion. That was way more interesting, I think, for trading, right? Back a year ago, it was all about the destroyers for me because there were plenty of them and you had a very responsive market where a confessor spike would then usually be followed by the others having upwards pressure as well, so you could spot buy opportunities, you could sell at the right time. It was all really nice and had a lot of potential. But with what's happening at the moment with the destroyers being so expensive, and then for the cruisers making them more useful or less of a risk, because now if you're blown up in a cruiser, a strategic cruiser, you don't lose kill points anymore. That really put them a lot more in favor. I think volumes went up on that change substantially, and as a result these became tradable ships where before they were major gambles. And so here you can see, I think right here on the downside, when we went below 180, I mentioned that looks like a good place to jump in for a Legion. I think I actually have a Legion myself as well at one of those low price points, and we're back at the 185, so it's not great just yet. 172 for the buyers, but this wavy pattern, right, is definitely tradable on this chart. Then we've got the Loki that's still testing low points, so you're at the moment potentially still buying below 180. Oh no, it's actually a Loki that I bought below 180. 180 to 173. So to me this is another one, yeah, if you want to jump in on a Tech 3 trade, I'd say buying the Loki makes a lot of sense to me. Then we've got the Proteus, lower, but you can see those minimum prices starting to go back up as well. 179 to 172, so that's not enough of a margin to jump in, I think. And then here another one where the Tengu last time went to 1 year low point, so you could have bought here probably 160-ish or something like that. We're back at 187 for the sellers and 174 for the buyers. And sure, the trend in the last couple of months has been down, again, summertime, in my opinion, but buying these 1 year low points, I think, do make sense even from a trade perspective at this point. And that means that for me, the Loki is still looking pretty interesting as buyers are below 173. One warning, of course, if you look at those minimum prices, not gonna be easy to grab one of those really cheap Lokis at this point though. And then for the extra products, I'm just gonna take a look at the Gecko coming in at 53.30, let's say. 53.30 like that, and the reason for that is because it is a unique item that for me at least always function a little bit as a hedge against inflation. Ooh, it's got a couple of really bad data points to see what's happening here. And I was kind of expecting, but we're definitely not seeing that on the charts, that with the rise of plex, which is also kind of like digital gold, you could say, in EVE Online, because it's the most direct representation of the real life currency, that maybe the Gecko would start to see a little bit of upwards pressure from all of that as well. As unique items, I think if plex goes up a lot, then I personally think that limited edition items will eventually go up a lot as well, so that the market of those goods should see upward pressure as well. But at this point here, the chart is definitely not confirming that. Gecko going for less than 100 million at 99 for the sellers, 91 million for the buyers. And of course, it's not like these are true, especially the Geckos here, true limited edition items like, let's say, tournament ships. You might already see the impact there, because CCP does bring the Gecko back from time to time as part of a reward scheme. If I'm not mistaken, anniversaries are very popular for Geckos, and then there's just regular events from time to time as well, where all of a sudden you can find the Gecko. I think especially when the Guristas are involved, as if I'm not mistaken, that's the icon that's on the normal one. Yeah, I think that's Gurista. So something to keep in mind, maybe, that I do think that the upwards pressure in the pilot services will mean upwards pressure in the unique one-of-a-kind items in the game as well. But for now, the Gecko is clearly still going for less than 100 million, which is actually in a pretty cheap period at the moment. And that's it for this EVE Talk, guys. Keeping it a little bit shorter, again, because it's getting really hot here right now. But thank you all very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.